Hello, teachers. Welcome to the new episode of Para Maestros podcast. I'm Carolina Londoño, and today, once again, my colleague Juan Andres Sansom is with me. Hello, how are you, Juan?
Hi, Carolina. It's a pleasure to be here back in your podcast.
Oh,
Thank you.
thank you. We did one whole season together, and but it was in Spanish. Now we're doing it in English. Please don't forget to subscribe to our channel to share our content so we can reach more people. And today our topic is bilingualism. We're going to talk about the challenges of teaching English or any other language. And we're going to talk about bilingualism versus bilingualism in Latin America and Anglophones versus Anglophones or European bilingualism is quite different now. You didn't know, right? Currently, it's undeniable. I think you agree, Juan, that speaking a second language has become essential in a globalized, media-driven world, especially English. But lately, at least in my experience, it has been a lot of interest in learning Spanish and Mandarin Chinese. Before, when I went abroad, everyone spoke to you in English, but now in my experience, when I said I'm Latina, I'm Colombian, people want to interact with me in Spanish. And they want to talk to me. They want to know a little bit more about my culture. So it's quite interesting how things are changing and the enthusiasm and the eagerness to learn. They dare to say any word that they've learned, and they don't care much about it. They just want to interact and see what it means to be Latinos also. And I think that's a nice step. That's a nice thing to do. What do you think, Juan? What do you think?
Yes, Carolina, exactly. For us in Latin America and in our experience in Latin American countries, speaking a second language has always been a privilege, especially before the internet existed. Speaking English, for example, became a symbol of a status, a demonstration that I am a worldly person, a global person, and someone cosmopolitan. So, mastering a second language became a form of a social differentiation and not a communication tool. That's why, unlike perhaps European or English speakers, we have to deal with the class. Uh, we have to we deal with the class complexes.
Yeah.
We are taught from young age in a school that this was a skill uh, of a few close to ideal of the white man.
Yeah. Right.
For this reason, transliterating words, having an accent or a pronunciating words has been a reason for
Discrimination a little bit, huh?
discrimination, yes, and a way to reinforce racial and cultural inferiority. That's my opinion in this
Yeah,
case.
yeah, yeah. Well, in my case, I want to tell you my experience. I learned English late in life. I didn't learn English when I was little, so I have strong accents. So when I was learning English in Colombia, I tried to speak with people that speak English. Went online and find people to speak English with to have a conversation. But it's true that there are complexes. You speak the complex situation that you speak due to our education was always there. So there was an emphasis on pronunciation and all of these things. And it is a little uncomfortable sometimes. And sometimes you feel, I felt like, I'm doing something wrong. I'm doing something wrong. So that it became sometimes an issue, and it make me uncomfortable sometimes. When I went to United States, many times I felt very uncomfortable because people didn't understand me. They didn't understand my accent. Some people nowadays in China, they still don't understand some of the things that I said. But at that moment when I was in the States, was like I was like ashamed of that. Now I'm proud. It's a little bit different, because I approach it as I'm learning. I'm still learning. It's a long learn process, and I want to know, and I want to I want people to know that I'm not a native speaker of English. I am a learner. I learn English and as a second language, and my accent is part of who I am. So that was something that now I know. But when I was in the States, when I started, my first years in the United States, people really didn't understand me, and I felt very uncomfortable many times. So they misunderstood the words that I said because of the pronunciation or the accent, So learning a second language is not as easy. It's very difficult. It depends of the language also. And then in my opinion, it's because of the sociocultural barriers. It's difficult to learn a second language because of the cultural barriers that affect us. And sometimes they're difficult to see, to to taste, I would say, to see them. It's difficult to for people that doesn't speak another language to understand what we're going through as learners of English. And yeah, what do you think? There's so much of what I said.
No, it's okay. It's okay. But my question is, if you now in China, you feel more comfortable speaking in a second language.
I do. I speak here. I speak a lot more because when I was in the United States, I was speaking Spanish to the students. I was teaching Spanish. Here, I am teaching English, and I have to speak English all the time. And sometimes I see people looking at me like trying to guess what I'm saying. But before in previous years, I was like, oh my goodness, they don't know. Now I like, yeah, try to guess. I let them guess, and I'd also think of how many people I've met from different countries, English speaking countries like Australians, Irish people, people from Scotland, people from other European countries that are not English speakers, but they speak English very well, and they do have accents too. So I was like, oh, it's not just me. We all have accents. So I felt like a relief, and I feel more comfortable speaking, even if I make mistakes. I'm not worried as much as before.
But the point is that, for example, in the European accent is more acceptable for the people, but not in the Latin American accent, or
Yeah.
for example, Indian accent or the Middle East accent. The people who speak in English, but they still or remain the accent when they
Mhm.
speak.
Yeah, sometimes it happens. Yes, it seems like we still have this ideal. What is the ideal accent? And there's not an ideal accent. We all have different accents because of our native languages. And I've learned that when I was learning to teach English, because I have to take a class of how to teach English, and then I learned that it depends of your mother language, how you speak English and how you listen to the English words and sounds are quite different. So that's something that yeah, it's sad. It happens. Yeah. So if you
They
have
are
a
native
certain accent,
speakers,
yeah,
finally.
yeah, it does, and I agree with you that it's important to have experience uh, any other accents. And in my case, I've experienced different cultures, and I experienced the Chinese accent, and I can tell what is the difference now that I'm trying to learn Chinese. I know, oh, that's why they speak that way. That's why they say these things that way because their language is spelled this way. So it's really interesting when you try to guess and understand the culture and the language itself. That how you speak another language, it's all about how your mother language is. It's so interesting. I find it very interesting. And I taught in the States, I was telling you, I taught Spanish to young children, and I was fascinated. And they learned to say many words, and even several of them communicate easily with me in Spanish. And I have a nice anecdote. One of my students were talking to another teacher, like something in English. He was telling her something in English, complaining about something in English. And she looked at him and said to him, uh, where are you from? And I was like, well, he's here. He's from States. Why do you say that? Oh, oh, that's why. He's your student. He's getting your accent. So he was mimicking me and my
Yes.
accent. So that was quite a funny story. Um, and it's okay, because they're young children. They learn from their teachers. So they were speaking the way I spoke English. So that was a funny story. That was really, really interesting. But it's
Uh,
it's
No, no, it's okay. Continue.
So, so in my experience in the culture, being Colombian and Latina, I want to say more than anything that I'm not just Colombian, I'm from Latin America and I'm Latina. So I want to, open that spectrum, just not Colombia, just Latin America itself, although we have different accents. And also some people in Latin America have easier accents in English. It sounds more natural to them. But still, I'm a Latina and I communicate with, when I taught the language, I communicate my culture too, about everything
Yes.
that is me, that comes with me, and something that a couple of units ago was talking to my students. We were talking about celebrations, and I said to them, "I am Colombian. If I moved to China, do you think I would celebrate things that we do in Colombia or not?" And they were like wondering, and like, maybe not because you moved here. And I was like, no. Or I asked them, and what about you? You're Chinese. What if you go somewhere else? Would you celebrate Chinese New Year in any other country? And they were like, yes, yes. And why? What's that? Because it comes with you, your culture comes with you. So that's something that happens to me when I'm everywhere in the world. Is I'm Colombian and it comes with me. I dance, I go to dance places, I dance, and I speak some Spanish, or I tend to say things that we do in Latin America that are common, or the food and all these things. It comes with me. So when I was teaching the language, I was teaching my culture as well, and that was beautiful. That was very beautiful.
And it's not only the language.
It's not
It's not
only a language.
the speaking language. It's your body language. It's your expressions. Is the way you communicate with your body.
Yes,
Basically,
exactly. Exactly. It's everything that you do with you. It's you. You are the representative of that culture and you are speaking that language. In my case, now that I'm in China, I am representative of English, but I'm doing the Latino version, just to let you know.
but but in your experience, to be a Latin American and Spanish speakers, a native Spanish speaker. Now, you said that maybe many people are interested in learn
Spanish.
Spanish. So,
Yeah.
what is your experience about that?
Mm,
Why do you think uh, people of other countries or English speakers are interested in learning Spanish?
it's interesting. Some people say the language is beautiful because the way they when they listen to it, it sounds beautiful to them. So a lot of people said, "Oh, I want to learn Spanish because it sounds beautiful." So that's one of the things I've heard. Another thing is it's getting more popular. Latinos are more popular, and there's more Latinos in the United States, for example. So that's why they're teaching Spanish to the population because they have more Latinos and they have to interact with them. And in Europe, I feel like in Europe because they have lots of languages. They speak lots of languages. Every country has their own. So I think they really love to have another language to learn. So that's depends of the country, but in the person. But I feel like also because Spanish is the second most spoken language in the world by native speakers after Chinese. So it's really, I mean, we are a lot of people and we need to speak Spanish, and lots of people should start speaking Spanish. So I think that's some of the reasons that I've heard from people that are interested in learning Spanish.
Okay, and I think it's a very interesting challenge as a teachers to create
Yeah,
a good environment in the classroom, uh,
yeah.
speak to speak in a free way the language and the accent uh, that you finally are uh, when you are in a classroom. That is very important, and well, is a great challenge as a teachers.
It is, it
Uh,
is, it is a great challenge. It is also very rewarding, especially when you teach little ones. That's my experience. But it could be very rewarding when you see them growing and learning and very interested. Because I feel that as teachers, we're more than the content of our classes. We are the person who they looked for and they look after, not look for or after. Maybe I'm using the wrong expression. The person they look to be like. They want to be like their teachers. They love their teachers. So as they grow up and as they see their teachers, they want to be like their teachers. So if you are speaking or teaching any language, any language, they want to be like you, and then that's a big responsibility. It's a big responsibility, and it's also very rewarding process.
Okay, let's talk about some tips for
Yes, let's teachers. If you're
yeah, a
teaching
good
English or
teacher.
Spanish or any other language, what other language can you teach? You teach any language in the world, and the Chinese also. I'm trying to learn
What do you
Chinese.
think
It's
are
so hard, the
the
hardest.
great,
The great tips.
yes, some tips?
Some of the tips. I said body language is very important because the body language will help to communicate the meaning of some words. But I want to tell you that not all body language are okay. For example, you need to learn from culture, from the culture. Something happened to me like in Chinese.
Yes,
When you
I
say
know that.
stop, you say stop. You say do this. I do this in Colombia.
Yeah,
Stop.
that happened in
But
China, right?
yeah, but here in China they said stop like that. So what happened is like when they say, I said, stop, nobody heard it. What? 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 They didn't get it. I had to do stop this way. So they get it. So you need to kind of get a little bit more information from the culture to
Mm-hmm.
use the correct body language
Body
or
body language.
some of the expressions because it could be confusing to the students sometimes and some people get upset but they don't understand blah, blah, blah. And you're like maybe you didn't do this instead of this or other things that happened to me like when I said I want to play with the students and I try to scare them I said boo boo it's
Oh,
scary
yes.
and then what
What
happened
is boo?
is
Boo, the
boo
expression boo, especially the expression boo, specifically.
yeah yeah
What is
in Chinese,
China?
不 means no,
No.
no. It's a no. So I was trying to be funny, and then they were like, that
No, no
doesn't
what?
that doesn't go with it, you know? No what? What did I do? The kids were like, what happened? So yeah, it's important. Do you have any tips?
Okay, my tip is especially lose of fear. And this is basically the objective of this podcast and doing this experiment with you and to be here is to speak in English freely and overcome those complexes, complexes of class, complexes of geography, origin, to be a Latin person. That's I think that we have to overcome as a teachers and that we have to overcome to be part of the global world.
The World War.
Uh,
Yes.
so I think that we have to lose that fear.
Mhm.
And during this podcast, you are going to see that I'm going to lose that fear.
Lucifer. That's great. Thank you. Yeah, Lucifer is important because, yes, it's scary to speak another language. And if you want to teach it, it's a little more scary. So Lucifer, speak. People don't really in the university. I remember the people were like, "Oh, you say this," and they don't understand you, and then all these things. But when you talk to a native English native speaker or any other speaker of any other language and you're trying to learn, they actually are quite nice. They want to learn.
Mm-hmm.
They want to go with you and say, try to guess the meaning of the word. And sometimes they do what or something like that, but it's not in a meaningful way unless they have an attitude. It could happen though. So, like for example, when I try to speak Chinese, I say certain words that I know it's wrong. But they still get so excited and so happy that I said something in Chinese, and I like that attitude from the Chinese people. That are, oh, good. They say hey
You
how
are
means
doing
very
well.
good. If I'm doing it wrong, they won't say it. They just say hey how, and they try to guess the meaning of what I'm saying. Same in any other situation. So it's just jump into it and just start speaking and we'll guess it. We'll get it. And it's okay. It's not, you know, if the structure is correct, and sometimes it's incorrect, sometimes I do some, mistakes, and it's part of the learning. And the
Yes.
idea of the communication and the idea of the language is the communication. Just
Hmm.
communicate. So that's one of the things. Another thing that I think is nice is to have a fun learning, have some songs and interactive games and activities, and I use music sometimes to teach some language in Spanish. Sometimes when I taught Spanish, in English we use a lot of language, a lot of songs and videos. But something I think, and it is across the all subjects, not English only, or not is Spanish or not language only, is the relationship that you have with your students. You have a good relationship with your students, things are going well, and the kids and the students will learn. And you just have to be a little bit more patient. Some of them they'll
Doesn't
take
matter.
a
It
little.
doesn't matter the language. You have
Yeah, it
to
doesn't
be
matter. It's a good
friendly,
relationship.
polite.
Yes, polite, and smile at them. Don't I would say don't, the first time I tried to learn Chinese, my teacher was very strict, and she said, no, that's not the way you pronounce this and that. So I stopped. I said, I'm not gonna have no classes that way. And I stopped for a couple of years because I couldn't deal with that, and that could happen to any student. So the correction has to be nice and has to be kind. So the student will say, "Okay, I get this is not the
In a
way. This is not the
pedagogic
way."
way.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So that is interesting. Now having a class, I actually learned Chinese from a Mexican person. She said,
Ah,
"What?"
okay.
That's very interesting. And then she's patient with me. She understands what I'm going through because she did it too. So that is also is also nice. And on top of that, we respect their cultural differences. The rhythm of the person learning, it's different. Everybody learns in a different way, in a different manner. So we respect the differences and let the brain do the process at the time they need to do the process.
Don't
And
judge the way they learn, the way they express their culture.
yeah, it's the culture is so important because we tend to misunderstand a lot of things without if you don't really you know learn from the culture and why things are the way they are. It can be a lot of misunderstanding, and then people would think, oh, this is rude or not rude, or my examples are mostly in China. Like people in China are more quiet in certain ways. They're very loud, outside they're loud and they speak loud and everything, but when you interact with them they are more quiet and more reserved. And then you're like, oh, this person, maybe I don't like, she doesn't like me, or he doesn't like me, or what did I say? No, it's just the way it is. It's the way they were raised. So you don't need to judge all these things very harshly. Just go with the flow, look at the people, observe what they do, and if you're learning another language, just try to learn from the culture too, and respect the culture. It's so important. It's so important. What
Okay, what
else
about
you
the
think?
certification?
Yes, that's important. You want to get a job in teaching another language, you have to be certified. You can go to, there's many companies online and offline that will offer some certification for teaching English in my case, like the TEOF, the teaching English as a foreign language, or teaching English as a second language, or any other thing. There are many many
What are
companies
they?
that do certification. There are
Can you
many.
repeat that? What?
Get certification from many companies around the world. You just type teaching English as a foreign language certification, and then you get it. Spanish also, I think, big in Spanish is a little much harder actually to get the certification. It's more rigorous. But you can also get certified as a teacher of Spanish too. And in being a native Spanish, it would be easier though. Yeah. So yeah, certification is important just because people want to see papers. That's why maybe people want to see a certificate. So yeah, it's important. But if you got to a good school, you will learn a lot. I learned in my school where I went to, I learned a lot about accents and why, for example, Latinos don't hear certain sounds. Like the brain makes the connection to the closest sounds to their own language. For example, in Latin America, the TH sound, we don't have it. So many people don't hear it. Even if the people are telling you, oh, this is the TH sound, it sounds like that, da, da, da. If you don't hear it, there's no connection that you don't hear it. And then you do the closest sound. Same with the vowels. English has lots of vowels, and we don't hear most of the sounds. We don't have those sounds. So your brain gets close to the closest sound. For example, let's see, the E and the E in Spanish is
Mm-hmm.
e, and the short I in Spanish is e. So we will Spanish speaker will just swap them. Their brain is just automatically. It's not that intentionally you're not pronouncing it right. It's just
Yes.
my language is Spanish, and I don't know the sounds. I don't hear it. My whole life I haven't heard them. So my connection, my brain will go to the closest sound. And that's why we see people pronouncing certain sounds the way they pronounce them. That's why if you want to get better and are speaking in the language, if you want to practice, you have to have a teaching. You have to teach the phonics more explicit, like the sound. You have to hear it many times. You have to, put to go in the tone where they're supposed to go in that language, so you can learn better. Like in Chinese, they have lots of sounds that we don't have in English or Spanish, and believe me, it's really hard because the brain doesn't get it. We don't hear the difference, but it is there, so it's more explicit in that phonic part. Explicit teaching is the best way, very explicit. In my case, I think it's one of the best things to do for pronunciation. But
Okay.
we still have the you'll still have accent anyway.
That is part of it.
It's part of our life. Yes. Thank you for listening to us. We hope you liked it, and of course, we're gonna have more topics in all of things in English for the not Spanish speakers.
It's great. Thank you. Thank you
Thank you so
for
much for
everything.
listening. Thank you for listening. And we'll remember, share, subscribe, tell about this podcast. Talk to your friends about this podcast. I know they liked it. Okay, teachers. See you soon.
Bye bye.
Bye.